Chapter 6. Alex. Dash 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 dash. When I drove back to Lucas's home, he was standing outside pacing, and I thought that was odd. Perhaps he'd read all about me, and someone had given them my picture. I became shaky until I realized no one had captured a picture of me from an iPhone or camera. At first I was tried hiding my marriage to Christian because of Max and my children. However, with Max, there was no hiding because he had his guy finding out information on me for him. That's why I knew it wouldn't be long before he'd find me. And I didn't know if I wanted to leave Lucas, but taking a second glance, he would never be an adversary for Max, and if I didn't take things into my hands, I'd never be able to get my children. I pulled the car up close and stopped in front of Lucas. He opened the door, glared at me, and I saw his panicked face. He appeared pale in this hot sunny climate. "Did you not want me to use the car?" "It's not that. I came home after hours of being away, and you hadn't returned. I left late and took a slow drive around your neighborhood, and then I thought I could go to the local department store, but I remembered I didn't have any money just in case they didn't accept your card." Lucas opened the door, and we stepped into the marble foyer to continue the conversation. "Are you feeling all right?" He placed his hand on my forehead. "Aren't you taking this a little too far?" "I'm fine. If you didn't think I was okay, why did you lend me your car?" "I didn't think you would take it. I didn't want to stop you, and I thought if you didn't have any money you'd stay here and wait until I came home and I could drive you around." I glanced at him, turned and walked away, and he followed. Fine, okay. You don't have to trail behind me like a lapdog and behave as if I'm some porcelain doll. I'm sorry. I didn't mean the part about the dog." Lucas smiled and reached for my hand. "But you're my porcelain doll." Now I knew this couldn't be happening to me again. Why do I meet these kind of men? What is it about me? I wondered. "I want to take care of you and give you things." "Yes, and you can start by giving me some money to get out of here," I thought, but didn't say. I sat and Lucas sat beside me. "Look, Lucas, I could work for you at your clinic and you could pay me for answering the phones. But I have someone to do that, and besides I don't want you working there. It's a pain management clinic, and we get a lot of lowlifes coming in, and it's not good for you." What does he know about what's good for me? He doesn't even know me. "Then I'm going to get some work somewhere else. I can find something in the papers, and if you don't want me to use a car, I'll call an Uber." I figured, if I found something, I had $60 I could use to get around to a job if I needed to. I didn't know how long I could do that, therefore, I would have to ask for the money up front. The whole situation was becoming more complicated than I wanted it to, but then everything and everyone I'd been meeting had made my life complicated. "Lucas, if you don't mind, I'm going to my room." I watched and spotted the newspaper lying on a table, and I swiped it as I passed and said, "I'm going to read before dinner." I turned and looked at him, and he didn't say anything. He smiled at me as if he'd felt relieved that I would be in the room and not trying to run from him. I heard a loud sigh of relief coming from his direction. When I reached the room, he wasn't the only one who let out a sigh. I fell across the bed and wondered what was Lucas's story. I had too much to think about when I opened the evening paper and saw the headlines. "The wife of Christian Kenley thought to be dead in the Gulf of Mexico, may be alive. The wife of Maximilian Blackstone and the former wife of Christian Kenley was reported by a container ship on its way to Houston, Texas. A seaman saw someone floating in a life suit and thought it was someone inside, but the ship was traveling too fast and too far away to see that small object in the ocean. Nevertheless, they reported it to the Coast Guard and any ships in the area who could make the rescue." The editor wrote. Sitting up and against the headboard, I took a hard breath. "They know, and soon Max will know," I murmured. "I can't think about this now. I have to get a job." I opened the paper to an ad for employment. There were so many different kinds of jobs, and I wasn't equipped for any of them. After college, I worked for a few mornings at one of Blackstone's properties, married that handsome billionaire, had children, and the rest is history. I'm not equipped for anything but to be the wife of Max and the mother to our children. I wasn't a professional nanny, although I had children I had raised sometimes and organized schedules for our employees. I huffed and shook my head. Employers would ask for credentials, therefore I checked that one off too. A grocery clerk. I didn't even know what they did besides hit a computer, scan items, and place them in bags. That wasn't good either, because with all the phones, someone would take my picture the minute I didn't smile and greet them properly. Then I'd be on TikTok as the nastiest grocery clerk ever. And I'd probably have my own music too. You're a mean one, Mrs. Grinch. I liked that song because when I read it to my children, they'd sing it. The way I felt now, greetings would be the last thing on my mind, where I'd say welcome to whatever shit store would hire me. That's another job I can scratch off my list. When I was ready to give up, there was an ad for a waitress, and as I read, it was in a bar and not a restaurant. The pay was extremely good. I wondered why. However, beggars can't be choosers, someone said. When I read over the ad, the job was in Houston. I'd never been to Houston, and it was closer to where I wanted to go, and far enough from Mexico that I could get at this moment. Now to tell Lucas. I had to think of something that wouldn't hurt his feelings. But he appeared to be a man who was unhappy and worried all the time, either with me leaving or something else I didn't know about. He reminded me of Jonas when he'd had trouble in his business ventures, and a dead body showed in one of his clients' room. Chapter 7. Alex. After going over every possible job I thought I could do, I'd settled on the one at a bar in Houston. I fell asleep quickly because I knew I had been under stress from being in the water with the hot sun bearing down on me for a week, and I was worn out. I wasn't myself just yet, and I knew it, and so did Lucas. Perhaps that's why he didn't bother me. When I woke, he'd delivered some food into my room, and I could smell baked chicken and macaroni and cheese, which had been better than boiled chicken. Along with the meal came a note. Gone to the clinic for an emergency, be back when I can. This is all I know how to cook. A chicken and mac and cheese and a salad. Hope you enjoyed it. Doc. I wondered why I never met a man like him before, I thought, as I took a mouthful of mac and cheese. The best I've ever eaten, but underneath the note, I found a bill from a restaurant. He had me excited and into him with that note about him cooking me a meal. Now I had to think about him, and why he'd lied about such a simple thing as cooking. Why would he lie over something as simple as this? I wondered. What more lies could he be telling me? And why did I care when I'd told him a lie also? No one is ever what they seem. I just didn't want to be confronted this early and have to think about what I'd done by accepting his invitation to live here with him. What else could he be hiding? I'd have to figure out how to get some money and get out as soon as possible. I didn't judge him, just like I hadn't judged Max when I first met him, and the way I'd met Max. I knew Max was mysterious, sexy, and the best fuck I'd had in my life, but I didn't know how much I'd enjoyed him and the sexual things we'd done together. I didn't know he loved to be tied up and wanted me to whip his ass, and how he'd enjoyed spending hours licking my pussy, giving me the most satisfying and enthralling orgasms a woman could have. That part sealed it for me, and now I can't function with a man unless he's into that. It appeared Jonas had those inclination, and I enjoyed him so much, but I was afraid to admit it, and recognized that I'd fallen for him too. That would never work out, and there was no way Max should find this out, because if he did, even though Jonas and I made love under duress, I don't think Max could get over it, or our family would be the same. That would be the secret to take to the grave, as some would say. Max loved when I would satisfy him, and he loved to satisfy me more. He wasn't a selfish lover, but he was a selfish husband. He was jealous of everyone, including Jonas. Nothing had happened between us before, and I thought nothing would until we had no choice aboard Christian's yacht. Jonas did everything for me. He risked the love of his brother to keep me safe from that man I'd married, and from the other men Christian had planned on selling me to. Picking up the paper and marking the ad that fit what I needed, I found something I could do. I'd been a cocktail waitress when I ran away from Max because he took my son Maxim and wouldn't let me have him unless I married him. At the time I didn't want to because I didn't know him and I didn't know he loved me, and the only way he knew how to show me was to hold me close to him, have Jonas stay nearby and watch me. When Max was ready to give me his attention, which had become occasionally after we married, he was busy and never around. Therefore, Jonas became my constant companion. I reached for a pen near the bed and circled a place where I could drive to early tomorrow and apply for a position as a cocktail waitress. Since Lucas usually leave early, it should be easy to drive there and get back to his place before he arrived home that evening. Just as I looked up and placed the paper to the side, Lucas knocked and walked into my bedroom. He'd said it was my sanctuary, and he would never enter it unless I asked him in. Another lie. I thought you would be late. I ate the dinner, as you can see. I offered him a closed smile, not wishing to find out why he'd lied about a little thing as cooking. Are you hungry? I stood, and before I could hand him the salad or offer it to him, he'd reached for my wrists and turned me around to face him. We were close, eye to eye, and I was uncomfortable, afraid. You're hurting my wrists, Lucas. He dropped them like they were hot pokers. I'm sorry, Alex, but I don't know what it is when I'm with you. I like you so much and I want to protect you. Staring into his eyes, I thought, maybe protect me from you. I didn't mean to hurt you. He read my thoughts, or he glanced at my face and saw that I was afraid of him. Maybe he should be afraid of me. If he'd read the papers lately, then perhaps he would be. You didn't hurt me, it was just that I wasn't used to anyone approaching me in that manner. I thought we were friends. I tried to make the situation comfortable, because after all, I had to live with him for a few mornings. I know, but would you consider being more than just a friend? He tucked his hands in his pockets and shrugged his shoulders while wearing a deceptive closed-mouth grin. You know nothing about me, Lucas, and I don't know anything about you. I lied. I may have a husband and children, and a lover for all we know. Then that wouldn't be fair to either one of us, if we struck up a relationship. Maybe when we've found out about each other, then we can make a decision on how far we can take our relationship. I was stalling for time, and Lucas may have believed me when I said I would take on another relationship. I had too many now, and there was no way I'd complicate my life with another man I knew little about, or cared to know about him. Lucas pushed back my hair that had fallen over my eyes. I don't doubt that someone is looking for you. If you were mine, I'd comb the seas and every town from here to New York. I bet he would at that. That is another reason not to get too involved, and to leave here as soon as I can afford to. If you don't want someone to find you, I can make it so they never will. I have resources where you and I can go away to another country, you name it, and you'll never be discovered until you want to be found. I tried to calm down, but I shook inside. I didn't change my expression because I didn't want to tip him off. I thought he was insane and scary. I managed to pull it off because he smiled. If Dr. Lucas was thinking like that, then I'd misjudged him once more. And for a doctor to make such statements, who knows what he was capable of doing? What about your practice? I have to close down my practice anyway. We could go to the south of France, or anywhere you want. What do you say, Alex? What could I say? Hell no. I just got out of a relationship with a man I'd married in a hurry, and lived to regret it in so many ways. How many men can make that kind of promise to you? More than you think. I can give you every monetary thing you've ever wanted in your life. I stared at him knowing he couldn't read my mind. I smiled. I don't need much to make me happy. Just a man or the men I love, and I don't love you, and I can't go through this again. All I need is to get out of here and buy some clothes to make me feel better. I can select them myself, and can I borrow your Jeep tomorrow? I strode away from Lucas, but I felt his eyes on me if there is such a thing. I don't think you're ready to exert yourself so soon, but I'll give you a credit card and some money and you can go shopping. I hope you come to realize that I only want you to get well. Then you'll want to have sex with me, I imagined. When I refuse, then what? My whole body lightened up when he said I could get his car and money. Now I could go out and try to find out what the authorities know, and whether they think I'm alive or dead. And get to Houston, and try to secure a job, get the hell out of here before I find myself in another hot mess. Would you give me a kiss? Oh, for fuck's sake. I stood back with an expression of shock and revulsion. Didn't he hear or understand what I'd been saying? I'd just met him, and I didn't feel about him the way he felt for me. I'd been caught off guard. He appeared to be needy, but not a man who would beg a woman for a kiss. He was handsome and personable, and rich, I thought. Aside from the glasses he wore on occasions, he was great-looking. As far as I could see or tell, he had no sexual deviancies or hang-ups in his life. But then I didn't know him well enough, I could be wrong. I'd been wrong about Max, I'd been wrong about Jonas, and I'd been wrong about Robert and Christian and scores of men I'd met in my 30 years. What could make me think I'd found the answers to the age-old questions why men were the way they were, and functioned the way they did? I don't think I'm ready. Although I have little memory, there is something in my past that prevents me from striking up a relationship with you at this time. Lucas narrowed his gaze then as if he was holding back and didn't want to run me away, his expression smooth. But it's only a kiss. Let's say it's a friendly kiss. I leaned over and kissed him on the cheek, and when I pulled back he had his eyes closed. He shrugged his shoulders and gave a sly smile. I guess that's better than nothing, he said, and reached for my hand and kissed my palm. Then he picked up the tray of cold, uneaten food, and sauntered to the door. Then he turned and said, I'll be gone all day at the clinic tomorrow. I'll leave the keys to the car, the code to get into the house, and money in the bowl in the kitchen. Sleep well, my beauty. I'll see you tomorrow evening. I didn't know how to feel when he closed the door behind him. I never liked to use a man, because I didn't like being used or lying. I'd never put myself in those situations with anyone except when I first met Max, and I tried to teach him a lesson. I was in my own world thinking I could teach men lessons. Because of that, I'd gotten myself in all sorts of trouble. After selecting something to wear tomorrow, a short black skirt and black top, and for some reason there were a pair of black pumps in the closet that just happened to be my size. 7.5 and with red bottoms. Did I mention how much I liked the red bottom shoes to Lucas? Picking them up and trying them on, I said, these must have set Lucas back a pretty penny. Over $1,000. But looking at this home and the property, I think my doctor could afford it. Here I am calling him my doctor. If he wasn't, he is now. Well, only for one more day or two. I would not be caught here any longer. Not after our conversation. I watched a series on Netflix and fell asleep in the middle of Witcher. I must have been tired and not ready to do anything but sleep, and so I did. When I woke up, the episodes of Witcher were coming to an end, and the sun was shining through the shutters. I knew it had to be around 7 a.m. I placed a robe on and went to the kitchen where I smelled fresh brewed coffee. Thinking I'd find Lucas sitting at the table or on a stool, I decided to join him. When I glanced around, no one was there. He must have gone to the clinic early. I sat and ate the cold toast left on the counter after I'd poured myself a cup of coffee, and turned on his small flat-screen television. I took a sip, and when I raised the toast to my mouth, a newsreel came across the bottom of the screen, and a reporter stepped into view of a strip mall. My mouth opened and I placed my hand over my mouth, but it didn't stop me from absently saying, "Isn't that the clinic where Lucas works?" "There's his car," I said, as if there was more than one person in the room. Breaking news. Dr. Lucas Wilcox has been arrested along with several nurses and 2 other doctors who run this clinic. He's the head physician who administered pain medication to over thousands of patients, and he has been accused of running a pill mill and helped addict thousands of people in over 7 states. I stood breathless and my heart knocking in my chest. I laid the toast to the side and took one last gulp of coffee and searched around for the keys and money. I found it just where he said they would be. However, I left the keys to the house, grabbed a small bag and dumped some of the clothes into the bag, dashed to the garage, found the Jeep and hopped in shaking and hoping the FBI wouldn't stop me before I reached the driveway. After opening the garage door, I looked around and backed out, driving fast as I could get out of there. I didn't know what to do at this point but head for Houston, which was over 200 miles going north. As I drove to the road and managed to get out of the gated community, I came on 6 dark police cars barreling into the community with sirens blasting. What have I gotten myself into? I thought. I'm having a fucking bad year, and it looks like it's not going to get better. Finally, I could rest, and I placed my hand inside the bag to check and see how much money I had to survive if I couldn't get a job. Driving and looking down and up, it became impossible to count it. But when I glanced down, it was all hundreds, and with one hand on the wheel and one hand on the money, I managed to feel my way through $2,100 bills. I can get a suite or kitchenette at a low-cost hotel until I can secure some kind of employment. In Houston, I had choices, but I have to get enough money where I can get to my children when Max is away, and hope they don't look for this Jeep until I can replace it. I'd never done this kind of thing before. I'd never done a lot of things before, until I did. Now I had to act like a fugitive when just recently I thought I had problems, but none will compare to being married to a monster, and now I'm on the run with a car that belongs to a doctor who obviously bought this with the money he received from addicting everyone in the South and Northeast. I had to keep my eyes on the road and my mind on what I had to do next. I almost ran that red light, and if someone discovered I was driving around in a stolen car, then that's another problem, because I had no driver's license and nothing that said I should be driving this car anyway. And then that would present another problem. The problem of my dead husband. Everything would be easy to get out of, but the dead husband, I think that's frowned on in most places, and presenting my case would be hard. Just who was the victim? The DA might ask. Chapter 8. Jonas. I picked up Max from the hospital where he'd had his surgery. I didn't know what to expect when I strolled into the room when the doctors were releasing him. As usual, I spotted his expressive eyes staring at the wall, and I knew right off instinctively this wasn't a good day for Max. Not that I expected anything more or less. It was never like Max to be a happy camper, not with all that was going on in his life, since he participated in and caused all of this drama. The plastic surgeon, who had a number of people on his staff, handed over the things Max would need, which included mild meds for aftercare. Max had insisted on not taking opioids because he was allergic to them. He would endure whatever pain because he wanted to function under any circumstance. He wanted to be a functioning when his people located Alex. He was probably in pain now, but he could tolerate it much better than me or most men. One of the young doctors in charge took over once the surgeon had released Max and gone through everything that could go wrong with him if he didn't follow the directions the nurse had given. If anything unusual occurs, what the fuck, I thought. There could be complications? Of course, because Max wasn't one to follow anyone's directions, because he thought he knew better than anyone. The doctor's name was Todd or Rob. I didn't know which because all I could concentrate on was Max's state of mind after speaking to the head surgeon. I was more than relieved he didn't hear Todd. If there is unusual swelling and the swollen tissue hasn't gone down in a day, then call me. He handed me his card, and I tucked it in my pocket because I was stunned. He should look good as new, but with a different face, of course. He chuckled. Just continue with the meds until the swelling is down and his new face looks natural. What the fuck is natural? How am I to tell what is natural? Will his nose look like a cucumber? Is that natural? Todd must have read my mind or my expression. Mr. Blackstone has a picture of the way he should look. Ask him for it since you're the caretaker, and we'll have to determine if he needs to get to the hospital immediately. I am not his caretaker, but I'd planned to hire one, I thought. When I left Todd, and he returned to whatever it is he does besides put people in a panic, I sauntered over to Max sitting and staring at his hands. This was never a good sign with Max. For one thing, he never sat still long enough to stare at anything more than once. Are you okay, Max? I questioned, standing over him and tapping him on the shoulder. He turned to me, and all I could see was a set of green eyes that looked like mine. The nose was different, and the structure of his face and jaw also different. Besides his confidence at an all-time low, everything else was fine. Just different. It's going to take you time to get used to your face, I said, not knowing he would react by twisting his hands. How would you know, Jonas? He barked. I'm the one who has to live with this, and I can't even tell how I'm going to look. My face is still swollen. I've paid this quack a lot of money to tell me that when the swollen parts around my cheeks recede, then I will be a new man. I'm already a fucking new man. I can't recognize this new man. I know you're. What do you know, Jonas? How I feel. No one can know that until you wake up, and there's no you except your twin, who's sitting across from you with a face I wished I still had. I'll lose my wife and my children will run from me. I cut him off because I didn't want him feeling sorry for himself, because he's not the victim here. Alex is the victim and we don't know where she is, and here Max is with everything including a new face, which I'd give anything for, where I could be someone else, and he's feeling sorry for himself. With a new face, I could start all over. You talk as if you're grotesque and you're not. That doctor is the best in Houston, and he's a man of his word. His reputation depends on it. If you need to go to a therapist, then that can be arranged, but you're not going to sit here and say, woe is me. You're getting a second chance with everything. That old face was to remind everyone who you hurt, but with this new one you can be different. You can be better. Not the cold, calculating bastard the world thought you were. Talk different and be different if you so choose. It's all in your hands now, Max. I can arrange. The only thing you can arrange, Jonas, is to find Alex and take care of my children. I don't know if I can face them the way I am now. Will he get off that high horse and realize that the children don't care? They want their parents, and it doesn't matter what he looks like. Max never knew when he had it good, until it was too late. Stopping on our walk to collect the rental from the valet, I turned to Max and said, "We're not going back to the hotel. After the doctor checks you, and gives the okay within a few days, I'm going to fly out and prepare the children. They'll be okay and they won't love you any less, trust me, because after all they are Alex's children too. She is the mother of those children, and it's a good thing." Max narrowed his glance in my direction. He knew what I'd been implying. We resumed our walk, we climbed into the car with me under the driver's side, and I headed out. "Where are we going?" Max questioned when he watched me turn and get on a ramp for I-10 and head west outside of Katy. "I hope you're not taking me to Austin, because I'll tell you now, I don't want to be in a city even if Austin pretends to be a city. I need some fresh air and time to think. That's why I rented a home for you. Plenty of fresh air, cornfields, well I think they're cornfields, trees, and the smell of animal manure." I chuckled, but Max wasn't in any mood to see the humor in that or anything, and he wasn't as optimistic as I had been over the years. He never could get over the darkness that lurked deep inside of him. Maybe it was dealing with too many men, and having this need for bondage to make him feel something. However, Alex was the only woman who could make him feel and bring out that part of him that had a soul. "Have you located Alex for me?" What he didn't know was I was trying to find her not just for him, but for myself too. I needed her as much as Max did, and since our last encounter I've needed her more each day that she's away from us. Not yet, but the guy they first have on the case is someone we've used before, and he said he'd have her whereabouts within the month. His name is Sebastian. Yes, I remember him, but it's too fucking long, Jonas. A month is too fucking long. She's out there without anyone to take care of her. She doesn't have any money, and the authorities are still looking to question her, and I'm practically an invalid. Don't you think I know she's all alone, but Alex can take care of herself? The way she did before, Max interjected. I seem to remember you had as much to do with that as either her or I. If you hadn't been so jealous, none of this would have happened, but it would take you too much to admit it. If you're going to get Alex back, you'd better change in every way you can. Do you think she wants to look at you anymore? No. Max sounded like a child because his voice was low, and he'd lost the arrogance built into it. I took my eyes off the road for a second. Then you'd better embrace your new face, and a new attitude to go with it. And when you meet her again, try a new voice. That couldn't hurt. Try softer, try flexible, if you ever want to see her again. I say that because I don't want to lose her either. If she leaves you from what you've put her though, then I will lose the most important person I've met in my life. Do you know what she means to me? If you don't want her because you failed to change, then I'll take her. Max turned and furrowed his brow. I gave too much of my thoughts away. That was the last thing I wanted to say to him, but he had to know and I had to say it. He wasn't the only man in the world for her, and he couldn't go around thinking he was after all he'd done to her. He couldn't expect Alex to grovel at his feet because she wouldn't, and I knew why. I knew if she wanted me, I'd move heaven and earth to be with her, but she doesn't want me, she wants Maximilian. He's the love of her life and everyone including Max knew it, but from what she'd done and been through, perhaps she'd changed more than I thought, and I may have a chance still to prove to her that I love her. We're here, Max. I put an ad in the paper for someone to cook and clean up while I'm away. I could do that for myself. I glanced over at Max and laughed. You've never done any kind of domestic work in your life, and you wouldn't know where your boxer briefs were if you didn't have someone handing them to you. And that includes Alex. We pulled up to the home, in a subdivision where the $1 million houses were far apart from the neighbors. When Max stepped out of his door, he didn't have to wave, not that he would do that anyway. Max sat in the car and glanced around. Alex had been wanting a place like this out of the cold winters, where it's warm. He stared and mumbled, spacious but not too big for her to raise our children. I never knew it could be like this. The weather is perfect now, and there's no snow. The children aren't stuck in the house for days, and looking at their phones for hours. Now they can hang out with friends. They may be upset to leave their friends to come here. Temperature 74 degrees. They'll get over it, and they can make new friends. Children are like that. They can change easier than their parents. I glanced at Max and he looked at me. Max became silent. It was as if he was trying to relive another childhood he never had. I was there with him stuck in a cold climate, and on days he'd never leave his room, just bury his head in books and study night and day until he lost that feeling of community. Being with others and enjoying the laughter of someone like himself, when in fact there wasn't anyone like Max. Not even me. I'd been the opposite of Max. The only thing we had in common was this face and our eyes. Now we don't. But we still have as a connection our love of Alex and his children. I'd been more sociable and extroverted, and I learned to depend on others when I joined the army. Max wrapped his arms around his chest and slanted his head to the side. I could get used to this if I had Alex and my children. He glanced at me. You too, Jonas. I'll never doubt you and your closeness to Alex again. We stepped out of the car and marched into the house, then the phone rang. It came with a landline, and I left it for convenience. With no one to take care of Max, he could lose his phone. You never knew when that landline will come in handy. I'll get it. A female's voice was at the other end. I'm calling about this ad in the papers, a soft voice said as if she was whispering. I managed to hear music in the background, and little else. Is the job still available? I can clean and cook and take care of children. It says in the ad he can't do anything for himself. Do you need me to dress him, because I'm not strong enough to give him a shower? When will you need me? I'd forgotten I'd said Max was disabled. Well, he is sort of. Any man who waits for someone to prepare his clothes is disabled. Therefore, I didn't lie. I thought I'd get someone quick, and it seems that's what happened. And I lied about his age. I thought if he was a man in his late 30s, that a woman would be hesitant about coming. However, this one seemed desperate. Now to convince Max to be a man of 60 would be a stretch because she'd see him and know he was a virile, healthy man in his late 30s.